Win big with new DRF All Access past performances. With one best-in-class product, you now get all 3 past performance formats. Go to DRF.com and use coupon code 1FREEPP for a free single card today.
Hi everybody, Dan Illman, Ashley Mailloux, taking a look at the feature race at Santa Anita on Saturday. It's race number 8 and it's the restricted lures stakes going 1 mile on the turf. Before we take a look at this competitive field, remember that DRFTV viewers have a chance to get 10% off all DRF past performances. Shop now by accessing the QR code and please use the coupon code DRFTV10. Here's the field for the lure, and you've got some horses in here with a lot of upside. You also have some horses in here taking some drops in classes, trying to find their way again.
Yeah, I mean, a very common theme throughout this race. I feel like when you look at a lot of these horses too, they've been facing either the same types or similar types when you think of the California circuit and big names there on the turf course. And I thought it was a pretty wide open event. Curious to see once the morning line is established what these horses will be at. Obviously, I think the outside runner is probably going to be heavily favored in here, but I don't think he's necessarily a single in my opinion, Dan. I think there are a couple of other horses with, efforts last time out that suggest they can step up and rise to the occasion.
On turf, trips and pace often very, very important. So let's see where our friends at Timeform US has this field after the half mile. And the number 2, Mano Rose, is a very fast horse, just won a stakes race on dirt, seems capable on the turf. I think he's got to try to go to the lead. Exalted does have tactical speed. That's one of his best assets. It'll be curious to see how they play it with the 6, Sarwar, who's coming off a little bit of a layoff and has shown a versatile running style. Isn't El Potente got to go?
Yeah, I think El Poent definitely has to go based on what we've seen so far, especially those races being mainly around 2 turns, right? When you look at the case of the 2, Mano Rose has that sprint speed and was able to translate that to the mile distance at Los El last time out, but different surface as well. So I think El Poent could probably be right up there with the 2, and maybe we'll see some honest, if not fast fractions early.
I agree. And if they go at it, keep an eye on the number 3, Flashius, dropping out of the grade 2 Del Mar mile. You'll note that that one has the fastest Timeform US late pace rating. A potential sleeper that would benefit from a fast pace is the number 1, Mano Ramon, who returned off of a lengthy layoff last time out. He probably just needed that race, going 1 mile and a 16th, his first start in over a year. He did some good work in 2023, winning the Singletary at Santa Anita at 1 mile and an 1/8. I think if you just believe that last race is a good tightener, he can at least come with a run and threaten in the exotics.
Yeah, and speaking of the last out effort, I think when you look at Mano Ramon, it was his first start in a long time. But I think if you make a case for him, you're probably looking at Sumter as well, maybe in a different angle. In terms of the depth that they faced, no, it wasn't a stakes race, but some big horses in there. Not a huge field, but in terms of next out winners, you had 2 of them escape artists, but probably more impressively Cabo Spirit, who was able to snap that losing streak in a grade 2 event and did it pretty nicely at a big price. Even Air Force Red came back to run a game second in a sprint race going 6.5. So I assume that he gained a lot out of that race from a fitness standpoint, and his form prior to that was good. Whether it's able to kind of handle some of these rivals that have a little bit more conditioning under their belt in 2024, that's a different question, but he can certainly take a big step forward.
While the last race was on a different surface for the 2, Mano Rose, it was still nevertheless a very important race because he had to prove that he could get a distance of ground, and he did it very nicely. He went to the lead, wired the field in that restricted stake at Los Alamitos. We know he's good on grass. He's won at least 3 races on the turf. He's going to show speed in here. We'll see if he can take some heat against some tougher horses.
That's the big thing. I like that you pointed out that he was able to get the distance last time out. We can check that off the list, I guess. But the question is, against this group, can he do it, and can he do it on the grass? He was heavily favored in that event at Los Al. Can't really speak to the depth of the field. I don't think he faced nearly what he's going to face against here. And I think in terms of getting a lead, he established the lead pretty easy. And we talked about the Timeform pace projections. I don't know how easy it's going to be. Yes, he's shown some very quick fractions and been right there chasing it or pressing the pace on the turf course, whether it's been at Del Mar or Santa Anita. But El Poent, I think, has to be in the mix, and maybe he's not as quick, but that's tough to say. He's been going around 2 turns more recently. In the past, he's shown a fair bit of speed. So we'll see if Mano Rose can, I guess, stay on the turf course at this distance.
Flashius was likely in just a little bit too tough last time out in the Del Mar Mile, but his prior start this race against similar restricted competition in the Wicker going a mile at Del Mar was a fine performance. He doesn't have a lot of early speed, but as you can see by those fractions, he got the right pace setup, and when he gets the right pace setup, he can do this, make a good, strong late run to finish third, and in this sort of situation, he might get a similar pace setup here.
And the pace obviously fell apart in that race, right? Air Force Red was part of it. Cabo Spirit, Noble Reflection, they were all towards the back there. But we talked about a couple of them. They've come back and they've run pretty impressively since then. So I think when you kind of look at Flashius and maybe you compare him to the horse that finished in front of him, Astronomer and First Beast, they were already more forward than him. He had a lot more work to do. I thought he raced very well. Prior to that, his effort, I thought, was a really nice win going a mile. He just needs the pace help. So obviously, he's pace dependent. You see that time and time again. Go down the page. He's going to be closing from off of it. But I still think looking at his effort last time out, he had some excuses, and I think he could bounce back based on the Wicker performance.
The Forest Sumter once ran off a 3-race win streak. That was back towards the end of 2021 and early 2022. It's been a long time between drinks for Sumter, but perhaps he's racing himself back into shape. This race will be his third start off a little bit of a layoff, and I thought he ran okay last time out against allowance horses at Del Mar. You could make the argument that maybe he's a little better at Santa Anita.
Yeah, I would make that argument. I usually typically try not to make that argument, but based on his performances, I think he likes Santa Anita a little bit more. In terms of his two efforts, we talked about the race on the 29th of August at Del Mar already, but similar story when you go back to the race on the 21st of July. I mean, basically stakes races when you look at the caliber that he was facing in them. And I thought it was a nice return to the races, first off the layoff. Now you have to think third off the layoff, can he take a step forward? And we've talked about Mano Rose maybe being a speed horse and horses like El Puente. And then you talked about the opposite, Flashius. I wonder if Sumter finally gets the trip that he needs in here. He's going to be close enough to the action early on, and hopefully he has a late turn of foot. I loved the effort two back and thinking that he could maybe get a similar trip here. Maybe he can find himself in the winner's circle.
Exalted, the number 5, was one of the better middle distance turf horses in all of Southern California throughout most of last year. Heck, he won the Grade 1 Shoemaker Mile back in May of 2023. He missed a lot of time, though, after early summer break. He's come back, and he just hasn't seemed to have come back as good this year. He is getting older. He's 7 years old. His last race, though, marked a step in the right direction. He pushed the pace for a little while. Then he got tired. At least he did show some early interest. He's tactical enough where he can tuck in behind the leaders and hope he's still the same horse.
We talked about Sumter maybe liking Santa Anita. Can't forget Exalted is 4 for 4 over the turf course. And, obviously he could be one that loves the turf course, and he was in excellent form when he was rattling off those consecutive wins. Kind of looking at him, I feel like they've tried different things with him, and based on, having that Grade 1 win last year, they took some shots, right? They gave him a little bit of time. They regrouped at Del Mar. They gave him more time, tried Churchill, and it just hasn't panned out. And he's had consecutive starts now. I like what you said about last time out. At least he tried something and he pressed the pace in there and he tired. I still think he probably prefers to be a little further back off of it, maybe a length or two early, and he'll hopefully just be able to make one run, similar to the trips that he got back in early 2023.
Sarwar has won from off of the pace. He's won from up close, and he was up close last time out. I think the jock realized that pace just wasn't very fast, and Sarwar is tactical enough to take advantage of that situation. It was a very comfortable victory. I do think he needs to take a slight step forward because this does seem like a tougher group, but he's in good form.
Yeah, this is going to be a tougher group, and kind of look at him and his races. We talked about a lot of these horses have kind of tackled some nice horses. He's just kind of tackled the same bunch. And I'm not saying they're not nice, but they're not the level as some of the others, like Mano Ramon, what he faced in his most out effort. And yeah, I agree with what you said too about the trip last time out. No one really wanted the lead, so they made the decision to just go for it. And the fractions were certainly modest at best, and he was able to get the job done. And I thought the way he kind of took off in the stretch was nice. He made a nice late impression. It was nice to see him back in the winner's circle, but even his prior win last year in 2023 at Del Mar was a good performance where he, again, got pace help. So not as pace dependent as maybe some others in here.
El Potent won last time out. He's won his last 3 starts at Santa Anita, and he also got a pretty easy trip on the lead last time out. But consider this is his first race in about 10 months. He was bet like he couldn't lose. He went to the lead. He showed his customary early speed. This horse on the outside takes a healthy run at him at the 8th pole, and the winner just says, no way. He keeps on going. Very well prepared by Dan Blacker for this race, but it precedes another 4-month layoff.
Yeah, and that's something that Dan Blacker's been really good at recently, right? You've seen with Straight No Chaser and this horse, giving them time, deciding to stop on them, putting them on the shelf, regrouping and bringing them back and being able to run first off a lengthy layoff. I'm not necessarily super concerned knowing that he's had a couple more months off, because you look at the race in April at Santa Anita and then go to August at Del Mar, and he was ready to roll. He's just second best behind Tio Magico. So I think from, a fitness standpoint, I have no concerns about Dan having him ready for the races. He's just really been good at this. His numbers show it. They're not too long of a layoff this time around, and his early foot should be to his advantage. We're, talking about him and Mano Rose and what happens. I even think if he doesn't make the lead and he lets Mano Rose go, that even if he's chasing and not a hard chaser in second, that he probably has the turn of foot late to get the job done. Very impressed with his last out.
Warwick actually ran second to Johannes, who might be the best middle distance turf horse in the country, at least on the West Coast, with Carl Spackler making hay back east. But after that race in the American in early April, Warwick hasn't really run back to that performance. His last race was okay, finishing 4th behind Sumter, and now another little bit of a layoff. He's a rock solid horse, but to me, I think he's the kind of horse that needs everything to go his way.
He does, and he has had some trouble trips, but you kind of go along of how many times can you use that as an answer? And he tries every time. I'll give him that. And, another one that they've tried different things with. I thought his return to the races after having a couple of months off in 2024 was a good start. They tried a race at Turf Paradise as a launching point, and he was game. It was a gutsy performance. To miss by what he missed, you kind of feel bad. And I thought his performance in the American was good. But since then, they stretched him out to 1.25 miles at one time, 6 furlongs back at the mile. I feel like the mile, or maybe even a little further, 1 1/16 is probably the right distance for him. I just don't know what to make of him against this group when there's others that I think I can make the similar case of. Maybe they had trouble last time out, but they haven't had trouble in 3 or 4 consecutive starts.
SEAL Team completes the field. He's a really talented horse. It's just a shame that Mandela's had so much trouble getting him to the races. He's going to be a 5-year-old soon. He's only had 5 lifetime starts, and this is the second significant layoff he's going to have to overcome. The good news, Ashley, is he had no problems coming off a long layoff last summer at Del Mar, and he looked good winning the Twilight Derby in his final start of 2023.
Yeah, you feel bad for the connections, but you also commend them, right, for breeding this one and sticking with them and keeping him sound and getting him back to the races. And you mentioned the hiccup that he had in the past, and they gave him the time and he was able to regroup. You can go both ways with that. He's done it, but it was at an earlier point in his career. By no means is he old, but it was a different ball game, right? Now he's a little bit older. He has more foundation. How does he handle it? I think if he is, 85% of what we saw last time out, he's probably the most likely winner. He has very few holes to poke in his case, except for the long layoff. I mean, that's the main one. But when you think of horsemen, Richard Mandela would certainly be someone that comes to mind of getting these horses ready to return to the races and doing right by the horse. So it's tough. I think he's probably the horse to beat, Dan, but I don't know how short of a price I want to take on him in this spot. And there's a lot of horses in here. If you're going to make a case for him, you kind of have to get your notes in order and decide what that case is. It's a really tricky race.
It's a fair point, to be sure. Let's take a look at our top picks for the Lure Saturday's feature at Santa Anita. We're going to take a price against this horse. I respect SEAL Team, but let's be honest. He's going to be a short price off a long layoff from a tough outside post. You're going with Sumter. I kind of like that angle there.
Yeah, except for when you look at the fact that he hasn't won in 2.5 years. Maybe that's what you need to look into. I just wonder if it comes to trip, right? When you look at Sumter and his trip, I think he's tactical enough that he's going to be a couple lengths off the pace and hopefully can close. I mentioned it earlier. I loved his race in July at Del Mar. I think, if he can continue to take a step forward, he's just making his 3rd start since April. That's my upside on him. I would not take too short of a price on him. Again, I typically don't go for horses that are on a losing streak, but he's very consistent, and I think he can offer some value and maybe score a little bit of an upset. His
last race at Santa Anita, he was 3rd to Johannes. He was very close that day. He seems to like this surface. Exalted might have to climb back into the old Wayback Machine to find what he used to be, if he could remember the old Exalted. He'd be very tough in this spot. I'd like for him to sit maybe third or fourth behind the speeds and try to get the jump on the true closers. I'll give the old timer one more chance. 4935 for Ashley, 5386 for me. It's the restricted Lure, Saturday's feature at Santa Anita. Good luck.
Hey, buddy. Let me tell you something. If you really enjoyed this great content, just click the like and subscribe button right here. And if you enjoy the race of the day, stakes, previews, and lots more starring me, please click right here. You're not gonna regret it.